little bit different than what you're normally used to on the CLI on like an Arista or a Cisco switch. While the principle is the same, you got to kind of learn the nuances of, okay, this is what the equivalent of doing this on the switch would be. So I wanted to kind of present that because the comment Ben made at the last meeting was, buy the biggest Palo Alto with all the various SFP modules and just don't even bother with a Cisco switch or something, just run Palo Alto straight at the top of the rack. So, with that being said, so what I have here is I kind of have a copy of the Arista EOS running as the ISP. I have the PA, and then one of the unique situations is we have a off-site co-location where we do not have access to the switches and they cannot run BGP to configure it. So I had to figure out how to get around the limitation that they can't learn about our network through BGP. I have to redistribute the BGP instance into OSPF. So what I've basically done here is I have my locally connected routes, which would represent the site where we cannot run BGP, but we need to have those switches and routers aware of that. And then the end product is just a whole bunch of what looks like to the router on the other end, a whole bunch of E1 OSPF routes, while they're just actually being distributed from BGP. So come to find out that if you need to do something like this, you'll want to create a policy or a redistribution profile. You tag your ISP interface or the interface where you're going to learn your BGP routes, and then flag the BGP routes as what you want to redistribute into OSPF. Then hit this, otherwise it works in an inverse. If you say don't distribute, it looks at the list of what you're saying to not distribute, and then it distributes everything else. But if you want to specifically target just some, like a route type or even just some prefixes, that's where you would use this. So once you have the policy on the BGP configured or OSPF on export rules, that's where you attach that policy. So the redistribution profiles here saying anything that's coming from the outside WAN interface that's a BGP route, redistribute back into OSPF, and you can choose to either do an E1 or an E2 route, and you can set the metric. So in the event that you do have local OSPF routes, that it doesn't override the normal 110 distance on the OSPF routes. So that was interesting. Likewise, the same thing is to redistribute OSPF in this case because I'm in a BGP. So a little bit different way of doing it, but it just learning. I'm sure everybody in here knows how to do these things on a switch, but kind of learning to do it from this perspective on the Palo Alto is a little bit different way of thinking, but it gets to the same goal.
It's even more fun when you have multiple virtual routers too.
Yes. I haven't gotten into that yet. But the other issue I found out is at sites where we have multiple different WAN links going to our carrier is how would you normally prepend the additional route or AS paths to that. And normally on like a Cisco or an Arista switch, you would just do a prefix list, match everything, then just set AS path to the value you want. So if you want it twice, you put 1, 3, prepend it twice. Where I found it's the export policies on BGP that are the same thing as saying to your neighbor statement on a switch in your route map that's doing whatever you want to do, and then the direction. So export is the same thing as doing a neighbor route map, then the route map statement, then out. So import would be anything that is doing it, the routes you're learning in. What are you doing with them? Are you changing the metric? Are you prepending AS path? Are you not sharing those? Are you overriding the value for some routes and not the others? So in this particular case, I wanted to prepend my AS path twice. So you have your BGP peer, or what the peer group. So in this case, it would be our external ISP. And we're matching everything, so we're not going to put anything in here. But if you wanted to say, I have multiple routes, and 5 of those are, we want that to go to the backup data center, you could choose just those ones, and then prepend only when the routes go out, that those routes will have that prepend. And everything works with regex. So it's, instead of in the command line, you're doing, set AS path, then the AS number, then however you want to do that. You can get a little bit creative with regular expression. You could say if it matches like 6.4 for like a region, if you could say match any region, or you could just do your regex where it would match just the Americas. So you can get really creative here, but then you just AS path, prepend twice, and then you're done. And then the end result and the AS path is now prepended twice. So
does anyone else run BGP on PanOS?
Yeah, we do.
You do?
So you've probably gone through these same.
That would actually be Aaron, but yes. But yeah, we have had interesting times with it, so we've got 5 different links out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what we found was, as we went through this BGP big project of transitioning from OSPF to BGP, is that we had PanOS in the mix. So Josh and I spent probably 40 hours each going to like almost 40 sites and configuring BGP on your Cisco's and your Aristas. We can do that all day long, and we were cranking through that. And as we got out to all the sites, we found that we had PanOS in the mix now. So we had to quickly learn how to configure BGP in PanOS. And Josh was actually able to figure out how to do some of this in command line. So we were able to just copy paste it when we went to make the transition. But there were it was so different because your standard Cisco syntax and this is a lot different to think about. So you have to kind of understand the way BGP works a little more. So Josh has been messing with this for a while, and we figured it'd be interesting to start the discussion here because you guys might run into this at some point where you might have to integrate PanOS with either OSPF or BGP or whatever else you're running, and otherwise you're going to break your network and your resiliency. So
the ultimate dream here is we not only have Palo Alto at the edge to protect us from the outside or protect our users from outside, but we also want to protect our data center. So we're going to combine user identification with app ID to say, if you're in this user group, signed on as this user, you may be able to get to this subset of servers. Whereas if you're not part of that group, so if you have like ITAR restriction, where only US citizens can ever see those documents under any condition, you could say anybody who's not in the US Active Directory groups that tie into AD cannot get to that network segment. So that's kind of where this whole thing came up, is if you put this at your edge and you peer with your provider with a Palo Alto, is how do you take the knowledge of the routing protocols and then apply that in Palo Alto when you may not be used to how it works, how the various graphic interface versus the command line, and how Arista, Cisco, Juniper, whoever refer to those particular functions versus how Palo Alto refers to it. But it just, at the end of the day, once I figured everything out, is you have your peer groups. You would create your peer group for your external, give it a descriptive name. You would create your internal peer groups for your BGP neighbor relationships. Then your import is the same thing as doing a route map indirect. So the route map in on a neighbor statement on the command line. This would be, the export would be doing a route map out to your neighbor. And the redistribute rules would be just the same thing as the OSPF theory, by taking your BGP and then routing it back into OSPF. This would be the same thing as, like, let's say you have a downstream network that isn't really on this router, but you still need to advertise it. You could put that here so that does get advertised to your ISP. So, and when it's all said and done, you just have the routes that you're sending out and the routes that you're learning in, and you can pretty much do anything you can pretty much do with the route map. But once you get used to it, it actually, you can see some strengths where you could actually do more than you could on like a Cisco or Arista because of the regex and everything else. And once you get used to it, it's actually kind of easier to visualize how you're configuring this versus the command line where you're just looking at text. So,
does anyone else run like OSPF or anything on PAN-OS? Yeah, because we were running OSPF and it was pretty simple. Once we moved to BGP, we had some additional repens and other needs. Because as Josh mentioned, we actually have Palo Altos. We actually are moving to a cloud data center, and we actually have like a primary and a backup. So we actually have Panorama managing both of the Palo Altos with the mirrored configuration, and those Palo Altos are sitting at the edge. So it's actually peering with the carrier. So we actually had to configure BGP, eBGP relationships with our carrier from Palo Alto itself. So definitely works because we're in production with it now. So yeah, it was definitely interesting to learn how to get to where we needed to go. That we knew how to do it with Cisco and Arista, but we had to figure it out in PAN-OS. The other thing I wanted to mention was, as we did this, we had about 40 sites moved to BGP. So we actually spent a lot of time documenting everything, and we actually found a really cool tool called Netbox. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but it's free. Some guy released it on GitHub, and you can literally document your entire network infrastructure on this. It's an IPAN. So what Josh actually went ahead and did was, you can actually create sites on this. It's a web portal, and you just run it on the server internally. And we're actually able to create, all the sites we have, the BGP AS number, all the VLANs, all the prefixes, the contact at the site. You can even literally do racks.
Space,
you could do racks on there too. So if you have like a rack at the site, you could literally do like, U3 has the server, U5 has the switch, or whatever you have there. And it's free, and it's called Netbox. It's on GitHub, it runs on Apache or IIS or whatever you want to run it on. And we've had a lot of success with it.
I've been tracking every, I no longer have to answer the question, well, do you have all the circuit IDs for XYZ carrier? I just send a link out and everything's there, and the AS number for BGP is there.
Yeah,
Track
so
what interface and what device it's connected to, IP addresses.
So instead of a spreadsheet or a tool that you might have to pay for, this is a pretty good solution. And we've had a lot of success, and a lot of the managers really appreciate it, and a lot of the server guys and the technicians, because when they come to the network team and they start asking questions, we can just point them to this tool. They browse to it, they go to the site, they can see all the VLANs, they can see a contact person there. They can see everything that should be there. And the racks, we haven't messed with the racks yet, but if you guys have racks like a data center, you can literally, put a data center site and then put all your racks. And previous jobs I've had, we've actually just did that with like a spreadsheet. Rack, 3, U4 is the server. You can do the same thing, and I'm pretty sure it's all built into the web app. So it's called Netbox. It's free. The guy who wrote it has a blog called packetlife.net.
Oh, Jeremy Stretch?
Yeah, that guy. He open sourced it, so it's legit. So I definitely highly recommend that tool, and it really helped us along with the BGP conversion.
Yeah.
If anyone here is ever going to move to BGP, feel free to reach out to Josh and myself, because
I've been there, done it.
we probably spent about 80 hours working on this, and now the whole company is BGP. So we're running OSPF on the internal, but BGP between us and the carrier. So pretty big feat, and no downtime. So we're really excited.
Surprisingly enough.
I'm glad to hear you guys were able to work through that too. That's
Yeah, we actually didn't even really. I don't even think we opened a TAC cage or anything.
No.
We figured it out. I mean, there's documentation on the internet, and it was pretty self-explanatory. I mean, Josh did most of the work and figured it out, but at the end of the day, it works. It's doing what we need it to do. And if you guys ever need to move to BGP, feel free to reach out to Josh and myself, and I'll definitely look at it.
just out of curiosity, do you guys end up using the live community at all for any help on this?
And I was actually going to make a comment about that. So when I was learning how do I prepend the AS in Palo Alto, you'd get one document that would kind of tell you a third of how they did it, but it was missing stuff, and then you'd find another that would have fill in other blanks, and then I'd find the third that would be like, oh, okay, I need to check this box, then put that there, and then put this there in this direction. So it was just kind of puzzling everything I found there together, and I'm halfway tempted I should go write a document that shows, here's how you do it step by step to get the desired output. Because if it was in one document, it would be great. Just click that link, read everything, you're done.
If you know like all the articles that you used to put the puzzle together, then by all means, feel free to make a document. And I'm sure like as it gains in popularity too, that would be like the first one that shows up in the search results too.
Yeah.
If people are looking for that.
Mm.
Yeah. And what's really cool at the end of the day is now our company has 3 exit points to the internet and a very large WAN. And now that we're running BGP, we're able to have it in such a way where if you're in North America, you run out of a Chicago POP, and if it goes down for any reason, it will actually go through a different POP in Europe or in Asia. So BGP really allowed us to get to a resilient internet connectivity, and Panorama allows the synchronization of the configuration. So every firewall has the same configuration, so if a user is trying to get to the internet or get to an app that they normally get to, if they go through Singapore's firewall or our German firewall, it's the same policy. So it also allows us to have a resilient global protect. So we do our portals and our gateways and distribute them across the world. And underlying all of that is BGP routes. So this is why it's a big deal. It works. It's really great.
So just out of curiosity, in Panorama, since you said that like all the firewalls essentially have the same config, I know that obviously various countries have unique laws as far as like privacy concerns and all that. Do you have just like one big device group that has all the firewalls in there to get the same config, or do you have multiple device groups that you kind of just clone settings to, or make use of the hierarchy?
We started out that way, but then we started to learn over time where like there are applications that we would never want our US based or Europe users ever using, like we wouldn't want them to go into Baidu, but you can't get to anything else but Baidu in China. So then we're starting to think, okay, so we're gonna geographically, like the Asia firewalls will all be in one pool and they can get to things like that, but everybody else, US domestic or Europe, can get to Google.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up too, because like there's a lot of laws coming with Europe, and
There's all the new Chinese laws.
Yeah, there's a lot, and we'd love to know what everyone else is doing too, because when a European citizen goes on the internet or does anything through your Palo Alto there's logs that are generated,
And then, it
you
also-
should technically not store those in the U.S. apparently.
Yeah.
So
also
if
ties into-
Panorama's in the U.S., now you have logs from a European citizen in a data center in the U.S. So, there's a lot there.
So
Lawyers have to tell you pretty much, and they don't even know what.
So the solution to that is actually fairly simple. So Panorama, you guys have a single Panorama instance, and your logs are stored in that single instance. Panorama has the capability of having log collectors. So it's basically logs are stored here. You can put a log collector in that location over in Europe or in China or in Asia or wherever it is.
And then the log forwarder
the
would
logs
go-
stay
yeah.
there. You're only using the Panorama that you guys use today to be able to view logs or run reports. So if you need them, you're able to run reports, and then you obviously, inside of Panorama, then you have the permissions because of the user ID and IP address and the privacy stuff. So your normal user account wouldn't have the ability to be able to see those logs that normally you'd have to log in with the user account that has the private address, the private IP addresses and usernames disabled. And then you'd have an elevated privileged account if you need to be able to see those logs or those records for some reason. Is how you handle that. And so they're stored over
that's
there.
insane. Like, configuring it to make it work. I mean, no, it's great that we could do it, but what I'm finding on the security side of the house is even lawyers don't know what you should and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And also, like, to do what you need to do, it's like you would really have to understand where everyone is physically located. If the salesperson are traveling, they could be in the US today, they could be in Europe tomorrow. It's just insane to think about. So
It definitely affects your SSL decryption policies as well, where in the United States you would just probably say healthcare, financial, and like government, but there you even have to be picky about, decrypting people's social networking if you permit it. So
then you pretty much have to also built into your design, like the European law and the logs and how to access them and stuff like that.
that's a new frontier for us. We've just been managing Panorama, so it's been US based. And
Does anyone else here have European sites? We have like one coming.
we had
One
one
existing.
in Ireland, one in England, one existing in Germany, and it was small enough that we didn't kind of know about some of this stuff because they didn't have Works Council or anything, but our new site is at that line where they do have a Works Council, and they are like, oh, did you think about this? We're like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
And we're just like, oh great, now we have to find a solution for that.
Plus the whole GDPR thing, where if you don't follow these rules, you can get fined an extraordinary amount of money. It's not good. So millions of dollars, millions. So
Yeah. Any questions? I know it's one of those things until you're right there and you need to do it. It's like, kind of like, okay, yeah. But that's the thing is, if you do run into it, just let us know. We've been there. There's no sense struggling with it if you can just talk to us and we can help out.
And one recommendation I can make too, like if you guys have like your own virtual labs or anything like that, have you guys ever heard of a tool called GNS3? Okay, you can actually spin up a GNS3 virtual machine, and if you have like Cisco router images or images that GNS3 supports, you can actually make a cloud object and associate that cloud object with like an interface on the machine that you're hosting it on, and you can actually connect that interface to a Palo Alto virtual machine. So if you sign up for that event where you can get a free VM100 and you have GNS3, you can make your own like BGP and OSPF architectures, test them, and see how Palo Alto virtual router will participate in that. That's actually what I do for my customers when they have complex routing configurations. I have a GNS3 lab at home.
A little less complicated than my setup here, but